Breaking news, folks. Just moments ago, President Biden announcing new sanctions against Cuban officials responsible for the crackdown on protesters over there. Biden promised this was just the beginning and vowed U.S. support for the Cuban people is, quote, unwavering. Senator Ted Cruz joins me now. Senator, thank you so much for joining. Just your initial reaction to this news coming out of the White House right now.
Well, listen, I'm glad that the administration is announcing targeted sanctions on the Cuban regime. I think this is the least they could do, and they're finally moving in the right direction. For the past week, we've seen incredible patriots on the streets of Cuba risking their lives, standing and protesting for freedom, protesting against the despotic communist regime. And for a week, the Biden administration has been completely unsure of what to do. They've been backpedaling. Their first response was to claim that the protests were over COVID vaccines, which is a little ludicrous. The protesters were chanting libertad, liberty. They were chanting down with the dictatorship. And the response to this heroic stand by the Cuban people has been the Cuban communist government coming in with thugs who are beating the protesters, who are throwing them in prison, who are torturing them. And I think what we need is we need the president, we need the administration to stand unequivocally with the men and women of Cuba and to stand against this illegitimate, corrupt, tyrannical communist regime. I think the sanctions today were reluctantly, but finally, a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. And as well as calling for liberty, they were waving the American flag. And
yes,
it's just amazing to me, Senator, because, I mean, how surprised are you, though, that not just the White House, which certainly was forced, I think, into this position, but so many Americans to continue to romanticize communism, socialism, yeah, even as they know the historic destruction, even as they witness this uprising in Cuba, they still cling to the notion that somehow Castro was a great guy and that somehow, you know, they keep making excuses.
Charles, you're exactly right, and I think this past week has been exceptionally awkward for the far left of the Democratic Party. You have the American socialists, people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC, who embrace socialism here at home, and yet 90 miles to our south, we see this socialist dictatorship where the government murders its citizens, tortures its citizens, imprisons its citizens, oppresses its citizens, and where you see absolute poverty and misery and suffering. And if you're one of the leftists in the Democratic Party arguing for socialism in America, it's an inconvenient truth, the disaster that socialism has been in Cuba, in Venezuela, all around the world. And I got to tell you, for me, Charles, it's really quite personal because my family has been imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. My father was imprisoned and tortured by Batista. My aunt, my tia Sonia, was imprisoned and tortured by Castro. And so our family has suffered firsthand the brutal repression, and it lifts your spirit to see the courage of anyone out there waving the American flag. They're literally risking their lives for freedom. And that's how change happens. That's how you see a free people rise up.
Senator, what more can we do as a nation? Okay, we've got the sanctions. You said that was a step in the right direction. Yeah. What else do you think the administration should be doing?
So I think there's value and clarity in using the bully pulpit of the presidency. If you come to my office in D.C., the dominant feature is a gigantic painting of Ronald Reagan standing before the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, and above it are the words, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And those were the most important words any leader has uttered in modern times. We should see President Biden go on a national television address and say, the American people stand with the Cuban people. This communist regime is evil, corrupt. They are murdering, torturing oppressors. And the people of Cuba deserve to be free. They deserve free speech. They deserve human rights. They deserve free and fair elections. And shining the light on that, using the power of sunlight and truth, that is something that dictatorial regimes fear. It makes them tremor. And I'll tell you, when Reagan gave that speech in front of the Brandenburg Gate, at the time, the State Department said, "Mr. President, you can't say this. This will never change. The Berlin Wall will be there forever." Less than 3 years later, that wall was torn to the ground. not by American rockets, not by American tanks, but by the power of truth and freedom. And I think America has a responsibility to be a beacon advocating freedom.
Senator Cruz, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and
thank you,
I
Charles.
echo everything that you said, and I hope they hear it in the White House. Thank you.